This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. With me is Hayden Howerton, and we'll get to breaking down what was a historic game in Virginia in just a moment. But first, want to remind you guys that this is the perfect time to subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. $1 for your first week, then 50% off for your first year. Hayden's going to start breaking down plays on there. We've obviously got the podcast rolling. We've got a bunch of recruiting and transfer portal intel that is flowing on the site right now, as well as everyone getting pumped up for the ACC Championship. And this podcast is presented by our friends at Thomas Auto Group. Head over there, up 75 to McKinney. Check out any of their 3 dealerships, Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and find out why we're partnered up with them. They are great people. They will take care of you. And when you mention On the Pony Express, they will give you employee pricing on any pre-owned or new vehicles. So check them out today.
Shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Look no further than the Thomas Auto Group. Browse our selection of over 2,000 vehicles from 3 great brands.
Watch this!
All online and in a few simple steps. Just click on the vehicle you want, save big on the most popular brands, and drive away happy. Plus, all vehicles sold are backed by the Thomas Promise. Visit our website, thomasautogroup.com, or shop in-store at the Thomas Auto Group in McKinney, home of the Thomas Promise.
All right, Hayden, we were there in Virginia, 33-7. SMU takes care of business, punches their ticket to the ACC Championship in their first year in the league. It was one of those days that little nippy but sunny, and you were getting close to game time, and I think you and I both looked at each other on the sideline, and we just kind of said, oh, wow, that's right. They've got a game. It could go any way because it's any given Saturday, and we saw that in college football play out. But what an incredible job by this coaching staff, a group of players to come together and punch that ticket.
It was an incredible weekend for us. I can't believe we got the opportunity to do all the different things that we did. But first and foremost, Ponies clinch an ACC championship berth. They punched their ticket to Charlotte. I've already booked my flight, my hotel. I'll be there. But look, this is the first ever appearance in a Power 4 championship game by a team making the jump to Power 4 in their first season. The Big 12 last year expanded with Cincinnati, Houston, UCF. I mean, those guys are just fighting for bowl eligibility. We're fighting to win a ring in back-to-back years, mind you. But Rhett Lashley, he got emotional in the post-game talking about how special this team is, how hard they fight, how nobody cares who gets the credit. They just love playing together and they love winning. And he got emotional. It made me emotional. I'm so stoked that we just extended Coach Lashley. The contract details are hidden. We did hear on the sideline pregame that if he ever is going to leave, it's not going to be because of money. But we talk about a little bit about our road trip and just kind of all the different things that we got into this week. I mean, we had the Monocle in D.C. for lunch with good friend Alex Anderson. We windshield toured D.C. We met up with BMF founder Casey Kroll, who will be on the podcast later this week. We had dinner at the Black Cow Chop House in Charlottesville. And we had, I mean, what I think is the best steak I've ever had in my life, which was that tomahawk. I mean,
Scott was pairing it with great wine, and Hannah, Alex's wife, joined us. It was a blast. That place was, you walked up and you kind of were like, okay, this is just kind of casual or just whatever, but incredible, just incredible.
It was unreal. And then, you know what? We woke up after a long night of being with some of our friends of the show out in Charlottesville. We had Bodo's Bagels, went to the game. Ponies obviously get the dub. And then we had some barbecue shrimp at Mr. B's in New Orleans last night, thanks to Mr. Bill Armstrong. Shout out, Bill. But I'm just grateful that the ACC lets us go to all these cool places. I mean, Palo Alto, you know, I'm planning on making my trip to California next year when we play against Cal. We get to go to Clemson, South Carolina next year, which is an incredible game day atmosphere. I mean, you have the most exciting minute of college football when Clemson runs down the hill. Billy, we're going to have to grab a picture with Howard Rock pregame, go to Miami eventually. But Charlottesville, I thought was really cool. There's a lot of similarities between our schools, similar architecture, similar student body. And then the stadium really just kind of looks like a bigger Ford Stadium before the Weber End Zone complex, of course. They have the big hill. There was like 3,000 students on that hill, which would have made Scott Stadium look a little more full than it was. But 2 Navy Blackhawks, or Seahawks, as the Navy calls them, flew overhead pregame. And you know what? I just feel bad for Dean, because my first road trip was a little more fun than the nail biter that Dean got to watch in Reno earlier this year.
Look, you will take a win in your first game. You don't want to be that guy, bringing the bad juju. But no, we brought the good juju. You were on the sidelines pregame, and some of the players and coaches were chatting with you for just a minute. Preston was on the sideline with you. He gave us a little advice. Maybe we got to do a live stream on the sideline like Coach Espond in the future, and be chatting it up. We'll get there one day with the live streaming and full blown, like 30-minute produced, video from our road trips, hopefully one day. But it was a blast being over there.
Yeah, no doubt. But Ponies win. We have to look back on my keys to the game from last week. I mean, first and foremost, I thought we were going to have to take away Malachi Fields. And I said a win for us was going to be less than 100 yards receiving, no touchdowns through the air was going to be massive for us defensively. And man, they almost had less than 100 yards passing altogether. I mean, Malachi Fields, he only had 4 receptions, 42 yards. He did add a late game touchdown when the game was out of hand. He's an NFL receiver, and they were limited by our smaller defensive back group, which really gives me and our DBs a lot of confidence going into the ACC Championship or the playoffs, where you're going to face teams where all of those guys are going to play on Sundays. Secondly, I thought we had to force Anthony Calandria to make mistakes. 2+ turnovers I thought was going to be key for this defense after he threw 3 picks against Notre Dame. But look, we held him 18 for 27, 108 yards through the air, that 1 touchdown to Malachi Fields, 30.3 QBR. Not a good day for Calandria, and defense just came ready to play. I talked to Scott Simons pregame. He was upset with how the game against Boston College went, but they more than made up for it on Saturday afternoon. I mean, they had less than 100 yards in the first half, and there was only 173 yards on the day for UVA's offense. They did take care of the ball. There were no turnovers forced by our defense, but 3 for 15 on third down is outstanding for Scott Simons' units. They were 2 for 4 on third down conversions. And look, I think a turnover on downs is roughly half a takeaway. So essentially you do end up with 1 as a defensive unit. And then finally, I knew the key to the game was going to be Kevin Jennings. And I knew he would do a good job keeping him protected, and he's improved every game. And it seems like the biggest games are when he plays his best. And Kevin did have his career best day in terms of efficiency. 25 for 33, 76% completion, career high 323 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and then he added a 1-yard rushing touchdown as well on an improvised play. But Kev had some amazing throws and some plays that we'll look at here in a little bit. He did miss Matthew Hibner on a touchdown that was wide open, but they made up for it. They gave him the shot again. They ran the same play, and they hit him for the last touchdown of the game. He threw an interception, but again, that was a great play by Corey Thomas. He really just camped out behind the defensive line, and then he just timed it up, made the jump, made the play. But look, Kevin is so much fun to watch. He's improving every week, and hot take, if Kevin outduels possibly Cam Ward or Cade Klubnik, maybe we see him in New York. I don't know yet, but it's so much fun watching him.
Yeah, going into last week, I asked Red about kind of how Kevin's being slept on. And on one hand, you've got Nick Saban talking about him and calling him the most underrated player in America, but no one nationally is picking up in terms of, since he took over as a starter, how well he's playing from a yards per game, from a yards per attempt, which is a huge indicator. I mean, Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback who gets a touch of Heisman buzz, like it's pretty much a 2-horse race at this point with Travis Hunter and Ashton Jonty, in my opinion, at least. Just, Cam Ward had his opportunity. I just don't think he did enough. But you have Riley Leonard kind of sniffing around with some national media. His yards per attempt is like 7.6. Cam Ward and Kevin Jennings are tied at 9.45, which is just ridiculous. It's a really good number to have. They're both playing at very high levels, but next year you're going to see I mean, a true hype train. Like, people talked about going into this fall, and I said that they were battling and things like that. Next year, you're going to see a narrative nationally that is going to be kind of similar to what Preston Stone was kind of talked about as among media members going into this season and the entire offseason, but on steroids. Like, because Kevin has shown it now at the Power 4 level that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. And he's just so calm back there. Rhett said last week he doesn't take himself too seriously, which if you get to watch some of the Walking Strong, we've got some extra video or whatever of Kevin. He's got necklace on post game, like that was thrown down from a fan. So he just is always going to stop and sign autographs for the kids too. I mean, just a great story in college football with how it's played out with him. And, SMU's where they are in part because of Kevin Jennings.
He's a great role model for the city. Coming from South Oak Cliff, he's a guy that has a lot of humility. It's awesome watching him, but you said it. He's never going to be a guy that's too good for anything, and that's what I love about Kevin. But playing in Power 4 has certainly helped us in the national narrative standpoint. I mean, yes, Preston got a lot of credit last year, but people are like, oh, he's doing that against, Navy, teams like East Carolina. Now it's, hey, Kevin just went out and threw for 323 against University of Virginia, had a great game against Louisville. We're going to get to see him against a national brand in either Miami or Clemson here in a couple weeks. And so there's going to be a massive job for Rhett Lashley of keeping the guys humble, remembering where they came from, remembering how they have built this success, and they're going to have a tall task this offseason to make sure that they can do it again next year.
Yeah, no question. But the culture has really taken hold, and offensively, they've got an identity now. And the identity, though, on offense remains the same in terms of the commitment to the things they want to do. But we've seen them get it done in a multitude of ways now over the last few weeks in particular. We've seen everything from huge day for Brashard Smith, and obviously Kevin Jennings as of late is they're, Kevin in particular is, having huge games for the most part, just about every week. But we've seen the big games from Brashard, and then we've seen Matthew Hibner make an impact against Pitt. And then we see these outside wide receivers step up, and we see Roderick Daniels step up, and it's just all over the place in a good way, not even a way where I think you could be nitpicky early in the game with maybe some of the things SMU did offensively. I think you had a reverse in there. You had maybe a deep bomb on a 3rd and 5. Some of the things that kind of end up opening up all the options for SMU throughout this game, in my opinion, at least. They just didn't click and score on their opening drive, but they were able to make up for it and get some points on the board there really quickly and never look back from there. I mean, this game wasn't close. Even when SMU didn't score those first drive or two, you just kind of knew it was coming at some point that they were going to get this done.
Yeah, this offense and really this team is finding a variety of ways to win. I mean, you look at Louisville, where our defensive line kind of just took over that fourth quarter. I mean, yes, they had 9 sacks in this game, which is unreal. You look at games where we've rushed for, over 300. You look at this game where besides KJ, I think it was a little bit of a down game for rushing in general and for Brashard. So Brashard had 19 carries for only 63 yards. We only had 35 rushes for 111 yards, definitely down from our 190 that we're used to. But Brashard is dealing with some kind of injury. We're not sure what. There's been nothing released, but he needs to get healthy before we go to Charlotte. I do think they're going to take care of him this week, take a load off of him during practice, but we'll need him. There were only 2 explosive runs in this game. You had Brashard's 11-yard rush that set up his 4-yard touchdown to open the scoring in this game. And then you had LJ Johnson's 17-yard rush, which was late in the game. Other than that, it was 4, 5, 3. I want to say our yards per carry in this ball game were 3.2 was this game, which is definitely down for us. It wasn't our best game on the ground. You pair that with 4 false starts by PJ, and then Ja'Kai had another one as well. That was really tough to see for this O-line. I don't really know what was going on. I talked to a guy after the game to ask, hey, were they simulating the snap count? Because when we played at Tulsa, they had a defensive lineman who grew up on a horse ranch, and he was able to to do the sound with his mouth, but at the noise level of a quarterback clap, to where guys couldn't help but flinching. And that was Jackson Player, which we all hate that guy, but he was a good player for Tulsa. But anyway, I didn't know if there was something like that going on. And from what I had heard, it was, hey, we changed the cadence this week. We're getting ready for it to be deafening in Charlotte. We're going a little more off the silent cadence and doing things that way. So I think this was an adjustment period. And look, I would rather it happen in this game than 2 weeks from now. But I do want to break down a little bit of our offensive plays. And if y'all are listening on the podcast, I would recommend that you guys check out our YouTube copy. We're going to have some film, some of the TV copy this week. Try to get the butt shot to have the whole film room experience going forward. But we'll start with Brashard's rushing touchdown here. Billy, if you want to pull that up. So here we go. Opening drive. We're on the 4-yard line. You're in the shotgun. Brashard is off to KJ's right. UVA's in a 4-down front. The Sam is on the ball. Offset tight end on the left. That's who the Sam's over, and that is Matthew Hibner. So on the snap, Ja'Kai and J.O., they single to the Will linebacker front side. And on the backside, Logan and PJ are supposed to work in a combo to this Mike linebacker. On the snap, the backside DN slants across Savion's face. So he actually ends up taking him, and they leave the middle linebacker free, as the D lineman slanting is a lot more dangerous. On the front side, you have PJ on a single block against the front side D end. He does get beat inside, which is my big coaching point here, because UVA brings a safety off the right side. And so safety has the C gap, that D end has the B gap. You can see that pre-snap if you're in a 2-point stance, you've got your eyes out there, but it is challenging because he's at linebacker depth, but so are all the other DBs when you're on the 4-yard line. Brashard ends up finishing this run. He runs over the Will linebacker who falls off late. He gets in for the first score of the game. And then the next play. Want to talk about Kevin's incredible scramble and throw that you've seen all over social media by now. Right hash, 6:35 to go in the first half. 4 down front for UVA. They're in nickel personnel, but the Mike linebacker, he's split out over the left. He's in between the hashes. He's over nobody. And so this is a 7-man pro. The full line slides to the right, and then the tight end and running backs are going to fill off the left tackle, Savion's hip. Matthew Hibner gets tripped up. Kevin has to scramble out to his left, and then he wants to set his feet and take a shot down the field. But you can see that the rush just starts to close in, and so he reverses field, which quick shout out to Birdman getting out of the way right there. Kevin makes a great throw on the run, and then, you just have Robert Daniels Jr. with the catch. But KJ is just a ball player, dude. He just improvises. He creates his own plays. I mean, I've seen people comparing him to Johnny Manziel, and I certainly hope he gets the on-the-field recognition. I don't know about the off-the-field, but Kevin is so fun to watch when he does stuff like this. And then next play. So right here, I don't love this one. We're on the left hash, empty formation. You've got trips left. 4 down, linebackers are outside either defensive end. So going forward, I think later this year, if we get this look, I would like to have a draw or something like that where Kevin can set and take off. But on this play, the left side is on the slide side, and you can see Logan Parr, left guard. He really does a great job sorting the linebacker to the D end. You watch his eyes here when it comes back. And then you've got the right side on islands here. This is not a great set by J.O. He tries to jump set here. He gets no stagger, so where his feet are exactly even rather than having his right foot a little bit behind his left, like you're supposed to when you're playing right guard. He can't absorb the power rush with no stagger, and he just gets blown up. That does force KJ out of the pocket to his right, and then KJ commits the ultimate quarterback sin, which is throwing across his body on the run. And in the booth, up in the press box, Billy, you and I thought this ball was going to be picked. I mean, dude's standing right there. This took a incredible and a little bit lucky throw by Kevin, but KJ is going to KJ. He delivers a perfect ball to Keyshawn Smith, and it was all right. And then right here, 2 minutes to go in the first half. Right hash, we're on the 32-yard line going in. We got 11 personnel here. Bouchard's in the backfield. Matthew Hibner is split out wide. 4 down, 2 linebackers in the box. And so KJ actually brings Matthew Hibner in. He brings Matthew Hibner in. They bring the 7th guy in, which is the safety. And so we run a split zone RPO. The offensive line blocks to the right. Matthew Hibner split, flows to the left. the safety follows him. And so Jordan Hudson, seeing that, runs a quick slant to where the safety was just standing. Kevin throws it off his ear. And this is an incredible catch on a high throw. It could have been a little earlier to protect Jordan. I'm not a quarterback. I can't even start to criticize. I think De'Aaron King would kill me if he heard me criticizing Kevin. But this is hard. I mean, it's hard to be a quarterback. It's hard to deliver these perfect balls like that all the time. It's still targeting. I mean, number 3, he launched himself at the crown of his helmet. I mean, the ACC refs did not rule it targeting somehow after reviewing it. I mean, the guy leaves his feet, top of the helmet, just like that. And this is a great play call, great execution. I think the throw could have helped us, but there are rules that are there to protect Jordan, and the rules weren't followed.
Yeah, I on this one, I don't know what is or isn't targeting. On one part of it, you know, he caught it high, and then he basically, you want to turtle in that situation. You want to make yourself smaller. And we could kind of hear that being talked about on the broadcast from the beautiful open air press box, which is a lost start. Hope UVA doesn't mess with that whenever they move the press box off the 50-yard line in that prime real estate one day down the line. But I digress. Jordan Hudson makes a heck of a play here. And you could argue that Kevin should deliver this ball earlier. If it's earlier, he's maybe one step out of that break in a sense. Like, so it's really bang, bang. And they brought pressure. They did all these things. It basically went hot. I don't know if that's what that play looks like. If it's, played straight up or drop 8 or you're playing, with 7 guys in coverage or whatever. But, in that situation, Corey Thomas, who actually made the interception on Kevin, is the same guy later on in the game. I mean, he's a really good safety.
Yeah.
He's a really good safety. And so he must have been in his film room studying this, that SMU likes to run this here and there. And he flashed right to it when he saw that look. And so product of maybe a good read by him and just kind of one of those bang, bang plays. But yeah, when you hit him in the face mask, I don't know what targeting is anymore.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel talked about this when I was with the Titans. So he would tell all of the DBs that when the receiver catches the ball, they're all going to shrink. So your aiming point cannot be at his chest, because when he shrinks, you're going to go helmet to helmet, and that's going to be targeting. You're going to get thrown out of the game. You're going to get a $20,000 fine from the NFL, and so go lower, go hips, or somewhere like that where you can avoid the helmet to helmet contact. But anyway, one more offensive play here. We do have a nice pass protection here with 12 minutes and 9 seconds left to go in the third quarter. 4 down, nickel defense, 2 linebackers. This is what UVA was basing out of this game. 11 personnel. Matthew Ebner is out wide again. The linebackers are pulled over to the left. Him and Broussard are aligned on that side. And then the O-line actually slides away, which was interesting to me because you only have really 2 guys there. O-line slides the other way, but it could be embedded in the play call where automatically we're sliding to the right. But either way, the nose guard crosses the center's face as Logan is technically man on him on the left side. And so he actually reads out of this. He does a really nice job. He gets out to Birdman. He tries to pass him off to the blitzing linebacker. But watch Broussard here. To be a great running back, you have to be able to pass protect at an elite level. You have to get dirty in pass protection if you want to play in the NFL at running back. He does an excellent job here. He flips number 11 on his back, and this gives KJ enough time. He delivers a back shoulder throw here to Matthew Hipner, which was, just unreal. And so that's what I've got offensively. I'll have another defensive clip here in a second, but if you enjoyed that, please let us know in the comments. Would love to do some more of this later this year. We'll try to keep pulling the best we can and keep getting more film out for you guys.
Yeah, and hopefully we abide by the rules. I think we're good. We've been messing around with it on Walking Strong, so I think we're going to be good to continue to do that. But we're pushing the envelope with both our pod and Bill and I's pod this week. I'm opening up the offense a little bit more. Not as some June Jones lovers will say or remember. I'll have about 75% of the offense in by year 3. So So that was before your time, though, Hayden. But good times too for SMU fans. So I think this offense continues to show so much diversity in what they can do and how they attack you. I think that's my big takeaway from this game and really the past two games, because Boston College took away the run a little bit in a sense, made it really a grinded out type of a game on the rushing side of things for SMU. They really weren't able to do what they normally do outside of that big Brashard run. And then you get into this UVA game, and they really sold out to stop the run. And they played with their hair on fire. It was senior day. They played with a lot of energy and aggressiveness. And I think that's something that is now, I think it's being coached to the opposition. Say, hey, play with a high motor. You might be able to create some issues for them just from that perspective. And oh, by the way, we're going to really respect their run game and try to make these outside receivers and playmakers, outside of the running back, Rashard Smith, beat us. And I think that's what I'm seeing lately on tape is that teams are selling out to stop the run and load the box and start to bring a little bit of pressure as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that RPO. I mean, yes, it's targeting, all that, but you have 7 in the box. That was a 15-yard catch. I mean, it's you'll take plays like that all day. I mean, so when we can spread guys around, we can go empty and we can throw the ball. We can bring it in tight. We can run the ball. It is really hard to defend, and I would hate to be a defensive coordinator against Rhett Lashley and Casey Woods and what they're able to draw up on a weekly basis. I mean, this team is hard to defend right now. And so you pair that with Scott Simons. I mean, a guy who I think is going to be a head coach at some point. I mean, he is a dominant defensive coordinator right now. This team had 9 sacks on Saturday. I mean, it helps the DBs when you only have to hold up and stay in the hip for about 3 seconds before he's getting pressured instead of the 6 where you're having to hand war and fight and run all the way down the field. I mean, these plays were over quick. But that being said, our DBs had a great game as well. I mean, only 108 through the air is really special. I don't care what kind of rush you're getting. I mean, we could have had a shutout if it wasn't for the fumble deep in our own territory, which gave Virginia that short field, which led to that 4th down touchdown to Malachi Fields. I get that. But I do respect UVA for going for it on 4th down. They were trying to avoid the shutout, and it would have taken a very soft coach to kick a field goal, take the 3 points, and say, you know what, we didn't get shut out. I respect the cojones on him to go for a touchdown on 4th down, and they got it, and it was, UVA, all their fans went crazy because they didn't get shut out. They scored a touchdown. But I do have some respect for that. So I do want to break down one defensive play here from this game. Big 4th down here, first 4th down of the game. We got 4th and 6 on the 39-yard line, which would have made it a 56-yard field goal. So I don't hate the attempt to go for it. That's long. I don't care. NFL, college, high school, that is a really long field goal. Calandria brings his running back and his tight end in. They get in a tight little bunch formation. It's only 4 down for SMU here, but they bring in their rush package. So they bring in Elijah Roberts to rush over the guard instead of rushing over the tackle. And then you have Cameron Robertson and Isaiah Smith at the DN spot. So you really have 3 elite edge rushers here in this edge rushing package. And you pair that with Jared Harrison Hunt here at nose guard, who, of course, as we all know, can come up big in big-time moments. Here by the center, he goes middle slide. He mics Ahmad Walker here. So he's going to follow him wherever he goes. And then Ahmad and Kobe Wilson end up rushing. So this turns into a 6-on-6 as the tight end gets out on a route. The center follows Ahmad. He goes to the left. He bumps the left guard off. But unfortunately, you got to communicate as an offensive lineman because the right guard did not get the mic point. And so he slides right past Jared Harrison Hunt, who smokes Calandria here at midfield. I mean, this was a massive win for our defense. I don't want to discredit the offensive line, but this is as simple as knowing who to block here. You have to be able to pay attention, but hey, we're going to take what we're going to get. And this was a big momentum shift for SMU. I mean, Virginia was starting to put a little bit together. They were being able to have some quarterback run game. This was only a 7-0 ball game. If they convert this 4th down, I mean, who knows? Maybe they go down, score a touchdown. We're looking at a little different ball game, but it was big for us to get off the field there. It was a huge game for this defense. I could feel the intensity from Scott Simons here in the pregame, and he was he was gassing Virginia up a little bit, which even I kind of looked at. I'm like, you sure about that, coach? But look, if he's going to perform that way every week, I don't care if he talks about Kennesaw State winning the national championship. If you play defense like that, we're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty on brand for Scott Simons. I mean, he sometimes you can almost tell a little bit, kind of not what mood he's in. Like he's always nice or whatever. He's always going to chat with you for the most part, but it's pretty. We catch him on a bye week after a bad, quote unquote bad showing, which this defense doesn't have bad showings very often. But he'll be gassing up the other opponent like he's been hired by the Big 12 to run their PR campaign. I mean, he just will absolutely just get rolling on, well, this guy and that guy and this and all they do and whatever. But at the end of the day, I think he'll tell you this too. Players make plays work out, and a lot of coaches will say that. And SMU has a really good group right now up front that's gelling, that's making it really easy for Ahmad Walker and Kobe Wilson and Alex Kilgore to make a ton of tackles and a ton of plays. Alex Kilgore had a great tackle that ended up, I think, being a sack technically, but Calandria was running to his right and he hawked him down. Kobe Wilson, Ahmad Walker made a ton of plays. You had, Isaiah Wacobia. You had, Ahmad Moses had a nice tackle at the line of scrimmage on one play in particular, but you have Ahmad Walker, Kobe Wilson freed up to combine for 19 tackles, and 8 of which are solo. And I mean, it's all good in the world of SMU's defense right now. Now they know in 2 weeks they're going to face a really unique test and challenge whoever they face, whether it be Garrett Riley and Clemson with Cade Klubnik or Shannon Dawson and Miami and Cam Ward. It's going to be a step up. And that's why they hammer so hard on playing to the standard that they've set over the last 2 years, really. They built it in 22 and then they executed it in 23. And now they're building on that with a ton of veteran players and guys who have been around. And of course, you got Elijah Roberts back, which was nice as well this week.
Yeah, he obviously makes a big difference for this team. It wasn't that he went out and just had a million stats or anything like that, but they do just have to account for him much more often than they do when he's off the field. He is truly a game-changing player for us. He's a guy that the rest of this defense feeds off of from his energy and his leadership. And man, I just love watching him go out and really, for a lack of a better word, just lead this team. I mean, even guys on offense look to Elijah a little bit to kind of see what kind of intensity he's going to bring, how he's going to attack every day, because he's just that kind of player. He's just a guy that it doesn't matter if it's a Houston Christian or if it's a Miami, he's going to go into every game the exact same way. So I do want to get to our MVP real quick. There are a lot of deserving guys here this week. I mean, KJ keeps impressing. I thought Matthew Hipner was deserving of non-skill or a non-O-line, D-line MVP, which I know he's a honorary being a tight end. But 3 catches, they were very athletic catches. He had that back shoulder grab. He had the touchdown as he split through the middle. He should have had 2, to be honest with you. He's the only Virginia player on our team, which was cool that he ended up getting that touchdown. But Jordan Hudson was on track for a big game. He didn't play in the second half due to an injury. I don't want to speculate on the injury, but the targeting was against Jordan. I mean, it was a hit to the head. We do need him back in Charlotte. He was only in street clothes in the second half. So rest up, take some naps, throw some sunglasses on. We've all been there. Try to get your noggin back. But we talked about it. Scott Simons keeps cooking. Corey Robertson Jr. is a guy that actually impressed me. I mean, he had 1.5 sacks on the day. He has an interception already this season. He has 2 PBUs this season. I mean, he's the 3rd guy on the depth chart. I know he rotates in like all D linemen do. This is a deep defensive line room, but he came over from OU with Coach Thibodeau, and he's just a baller when he gets in there. I love when he's in the game because I think he's a very underrated rusher. He only has 2.5 sacks on the year, but he wins a lot of one-on-ones, especially when they're sliding the other way to go to Elijah or Cam Robertson or whoever. There's a lot of love to go around, but ultimately this week, I think I'm going to give it to an offensive lineman. I mean, I thought Logan Parr played really great in pass protection. I think he had some really nice pancakes out there. But I think Ja'Kai Clark played his best game as a Mustang. I mean, other than the false start, there were no obvious mental busts on this offensive line unit. That is a crucial part of playing center. I mean, it's just getting everybody on the right page, simple as that. Because when defenses can throw infinite number of looks at you, especially when you have wrinkles and things like that, it's easier for centers to, watch the tape, be able to say, okay, last week they did X. And then you go out on the field and you're like, oh my God, I've never seen this look before. And you just have to make everybody right and move on. And then you'll correct it on the sideline. But there was nothing like that where, like the Virginia play where they just turn a guy loose, we didn't have anything like that, which is big. And then he had no pressures against a good pass rushing nose guard of Anthony Britton, which I know pass rushing nose guard is a little bit of an oxymoron, but he was the highest grade offensive lineman in run and pass. So I got to give it to Ja'Kai this week.
I am going with Jordan Hudson. He had a huge impact on the game when he was in there. He finished with a team high 6 receptions on 7 targets, 56 yards, 1 touchdown. And I just felt like he, before his injury, was, headed towards a 100-yard day. Technically, but he's just playing a real high level of football right now. I think in both blocking, catching the football, he just seems really on. I don't know what his only non-catch was. I'd have to go back and find it, but he's looked like the guy that SMU hoped he'd be coming in. Really, all 3 of the outside receivers have been, but Moochie Dixon had a huge play on his 52-yard jaunt that set up the Brashard Smith touchdown. Of course, Roger continues to play well. Keyshawn's been doing some good things, but yeah, I go with Jordan Hudson. I just think he's really important in terms of this defense forced them to go to the outside again. They're selling out to stop the run. They, kind of left Matthew Hibner wide open, which means they gave a little bit more attention to the outside receivers, and Jordan Hudson still found a way to produce in just a half of football. So hopefully he gets better. I think he will. And, if he's not back out there for Cal, I would assume he ends up playing against Miami. From what Rhett Lashley said, it's, it didn't seem like he was out there on the sideline after the game in street clothes, and Rhett made it seem like, they're just being careful. By that point, it was whatever it was. If they were going to beat Virginia, they were going to just go for it without Jordan Hudson, it sounded like. So hopefully he bounces back, and we'll hear from Rhett at some point on Tuesday about it in all likelihood, and we'll see how it goes. So got any final thoughts on this SMU UVA game? This was relatively stress-free. We said that, you and I were talking about it before the game, how, hey, it'd just be really nice if we can just, if SMU would just get this one and just not make people stress about it. And they did.
Yeah, just Stanford somebody where it's 21-0 before the national anthem is over, as Casey Woods put it. But this is a big deal. I can't understate enough what it means as a guy who came to SMU to try to jumpstart something like this. At the end of the day, and we'll get our Cal breakdown later this week, at the end of the day, regardless of what happens this Saturday, SMU is 1 win away in Charlotte from having a seat at the table to play for a national championship, which I'm getting goosebumps right now saying that, because preseason, Billy, we did not see this coming. I said, our ceiling would be we could be in Charlotte, but I don't think anybody could have seen that legitimately we would be the first team to clinch. We would be the home team for the ACC Championship with a legitimate shot when the rankings come out tomorrow for there to be 3 ACC teams that could go to the playoffs. So the job's not finished, though. The famous Kobe Bryant line. Rhett Lashley said the same thing in his postgame press conference. Cal just came off of a big win against their arch rival Stanford. They are bowl eligible. They do have 6 wins. That does help us. But this is going to be a tough week to stay focused. The ticket's already punched to Charlotte, regardless of what happens. But you have to take care of business this week to ensure that no matter what happens next week, that you're going to be all right. There is no at-large bid if you lose to Cal. There's just not a chance. But I already booked my flight, my hotel. I got the okay from my boss to miss our Christmas party to go to Charlotte. So we'll preview Cal later this week, but it's just an exciting time to be a Mustang right now.
See, I think there's a outside shot that SMU could get into the college football playoff if they take care of business against Cal, maybe win in a dominant fashion, and then maybe lose a close one to Miami. There's SEC chaos all over the place. And you've got a Big 12 that is starting to eat each other up. And Boise's ahead of the Big 12, I think, right now. Or maybe, it's just BYU. So there's chaos in terms of, if you're Brett Yormark right now, you've got to be just shaking in your boots that someone hasn't seized the opportunity in the truck stop 12 or whatever they are nicknamed by the SMU fans. It's dire over there. Meanwhile, the ACC is surging. Clemson was 12th in the AP poll, I believe. You've got Miami and SMU in the top 10. So they're getting a little bit more respect as a conference as it goes. And we'll see. I mean, hope is free. I will say that. But the best way to figure this out is to just go win and take care of business. And also, it'd be so important. And again, we can get ahead of ourselves because that's what we're allowed to do now. But if you can get a bye and you can play in the ACC Championship game on December 7th, win it, and your next game is New Year's Eve or whatever it is, that is huge rather than playing December 22nd or whatever weekend that it is that you play and having to figure out, okay, you're hosting or you're on the road. That's basically an extended bye. It's basically a bye week. And then you play a game. For somebody like Brashard Smith, if he's nicked up, that's not good. I mean, it's fine. It's good. It's more time, but it's not great. But you talk about 3.5 weeks off. Yeah, everybody on the message board can, hang out in the panic room and talk about Russ. But the reality is that SMU will have time to actually get healthy. And if you get a tuned up Brashard Smith ready to go, which he was ready to go game one for SMU, there's a better opportunity there on top of just playing, a team that is going to be, lower seeded than you in a sense as well. So, and if you win the ACC championship, you're in the 3 seed as it stands right now. So then you're really in a better spot as well. So it's pretty incredible times right now. And so shout out to the SMU staff and players that got it done this weekend. And we'll be in Charlotte. We're working on some things. We're working on doing a live show on Saturday. Hopefully more details to come. We've got a couple of locations we're going to start talking to tomorrow, Tuesday, as we're recording this is Monday night. And then we're going to get to the decision-making process if we can get it done or not, or we make it a different location or something. But we will keep you guys posted. So the idea, just to kind of block out your day if you're playing around Charlotte, would be probably somewhere in that 1 p.m. Eastern time would be the pod. And then SMU plays UVA at 2:15 Eastern. And then you'd have 4 hours until game time, roughly, by the time the basketball game ends. So it's kind of what we're exploring. Stay tuned. We'll see what we can do. But nevertheless, we're going to be in Charlotte. And everyone from pretty much the entire On the Pony Express crew is going to be there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get going any farther in this podcast, got to remind you guys about our friends at Roback. Roback, I'm wearing the hoodie right now. It is just really cold now in Dallas. And this is the perfect chill on the couch or chill even outside. If you've got a little fire pit going, you can get this one on roback.com, RHOBACK.com, and you can get hooked up with their discount that they're offering SMU fans. And it's a great discount. Pony Express 20, that gets you 20% off your first order. Again, Pony Express 20 for 20% off your order at roback.com. for first-time customers only. I'm wearing the Triple D hoodie right now. They've got the polos that are still available. The quarter zip is a great option for you guys as well. It's time to upgrade your wardrobe and do it with our friends at Roback. They also have the great joggers as well. I would highly recommend checking out those with it cooling down. So appreciate Roback for all the support. And it's Christmas or holidays or whatever. Time to get your gifts in line and give your favorite SMU fan or TCU fan some SMU gear from Roback and let them know that they can sport DFW's team with Roback. So, Hayden, we're going to jump into what was a wild week of college football. Where do you want to begin?
I don't even know where to start. I mean, you had Big 12 chaos, you had SEC chaos. I mean, you just had a variety of things going down. I don't think anybody looked strong this weekend that was around us, even ahead of us, other than maybe Ohio State when they took down Indiana at the shoe. Unfortunately, the Cinderella story for Indiana does come to an end. They got their first loss of the season handed to them by Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes. But I still think an 11-1 Indiana team is going to make the playoff. We'll see what Ohio State decides to do because, unfortunately, now you have to start thinking about, okay, well, does a 10-2 Ohio State team get in the playoff regardless? If they end up losing to Michigan this week, do they get into the playoff either way? And so that's the game you have to start playing. Lane Kiffin joked about it earlier this year of you don't know if you want to play in the championship games anymore because it might hurt you if you're a 2-loss team in a power conference to where it's looking like you're going to be a lock with 2 losses. But with 3, that's where the conversation becomes a lot more interesting.
Well, I completely agree with you. We were not surprised Ohio State took it to Indiana. I would say that, no disrespect to what Kurt Cignetti is building there, but they really hadn't played anyone. I mean, it was as easy as a game to predict as, Oregon Liberty last year. It just wasn't going to happen, in my opinion, at least. It was a little close early on, but Ohio State really flexed on them and took it to them. And I will say another game that, you're kind of hoping that would be close and maybe it would have been, a game that would have featured an upset, Army Notre Dame. That did not happen though. And
God, I was sad about that one.
Just I don't know. It's just Notre Dame. It's not going to surprise me at all if they go into the college football playoff and get quote unquote upset or whatever. It's just they just don't look that good to me. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to put the I don't like the bias for Notre Dame as far as them getting ranked so high. I mean, all they have to do is be 12th. Like, I don't understand why they have to be, 6 or whatever. That is so much respect for a team that lost in Northern Illinois. I know they've probably improved and they've been playing better and all those things, but I just don't think their schedule's that impressive. And we'll see. We'll see how it plays out because unless USC upsets them, they're punching their ticket. They're in. And then they're probably in as it stands, but I don't know. That's where the interesting piece of the SEC could come into play. Like, would a team like, I don't know who else, like A&M, could A&M somehow sneak in or something like that? I don't know, but there are still options for some teams out there to sneak in because you had teams like Alabama not showing up in Norman at all. I mean, SMU showed up better than Alabama did in Norman a year ago. And Oklahoma just beat the brakes off of them. I mean, 24-3, but it wasn't competitive. We were watching it at dinner and it just wasn't close.
This is a bad Oklahoma team. I mean, I do want to touch on Notre Dame here in a second, but this is not the same Oklahoma that it's been for the last decade plus. I mean, this is a team that made the jump to the SEC and pretty much did what everybody expected them to do when they got the SEC, which there was going to be a big adjustment. And we thought Texas was going to do the same thing. Now, Texas has had a much easier slate than Oklahoma has had. And I don't think Texas is a national champion contender, in my opinion. I think they're just unproven. I think the only really relevant college football playoff team they played is Georgia, and they lost in Austin. So I don't see them going into the playoff. And I think even Notre Dame would play Texas really well. But I do want to talk about the Irish. I mean, Riley Leonard, his season high passing is 229. That is not screaming a college football playoff, national champion dark horse, in my opinion. I mean, yes, the Northern Illinois loss really is what all of this stems from, because you lose to Northern Illinois, who their record now is 6-5. It just shows that it would be one thing if they lost to a Tulane or someone like that who is going to make a push to possibly be a dark horse for the playoff. But you lose to Northern Illinois, and the rest of your season doesn't matter. But they haven't really just played anybody, Billy. I mean, honestly, you look at the rest of their teams. Yes, I know they play 5 ACC teams, but overall, the teams that we've played that are in common are Virginia, Louisville. You've got Stanford, and all 3 of those teams were very similar games that SMU put up. And you think about the recruiting talent that Notre Dame gets versus SMU. I mean, yes, I think SMU is trending in the right direction from a recruiting standpoint. I think eventually SMU will get a 5-star. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know who it could possibly be. But like Zayden Kremplin, I think is going to be a guy that SMU is going to have a serious chance to get, high 4-star offensive lineman. But Notre Dame gets those guys every year. It's the exception when SMU gets a guy like that. And so I think they're very similar teams on the field, but I think our rushing defense would dominate Notre Dame and really make them one-dimensional, force them to throw the ball, and I think SMU would win that game head-to-head.
With Notre Dame, I completely agree with you. I think it matches up really well. I mean, you look at Riley Leonard, he's kind of – I just feel like he's a clunky passer, and they haven't had an NFL receiver in a long time. And so if you can find a way to slow down their rushing attack and look, I watched them against Navy. I mean, they ate and they were able to get what they wanted. And I've watched a couple other Notre Dame games this year. Just haven't, been able to watch too much of them. But from what I've seen from Riley Leonard, just kind of clunky. And I mean, that's the only way I know how to describe it. And if SMU can slow down that rushing attack, if they do face them, which if Notre Dame were to stay at 6 in the college football playoff, I mean, you're looking at, 5 wins, they're playing 4. And if SMU wins, they're playing Notre Dame. And they're playing them in the Peach, most likely. And, I mean, who knows? That's a good situation if you're SMU. I mean, that's a dream.
Yeah.
In terms of matchups. I mean, you can make the case for others up and down that line. I mean, some people have mentioned, a Penn State or something like that, just with, kind of how inept they are offensively for the most part. But, Notre Dame is a really good matchup for SMU, I think. And that's looking way ahead. But, they did handle business against Army. So kudos to them for doing that. And then you had Penn State, who won by 1 over Minnesota and just continue to just kind of Big 12 squeak or a Big 10 squeak by in their games. So I just think it's a really just hard job for the committee. I mean, when you go through all of these different strength of record versus strength of schedule, and I just wish, here's my thing with the committee. And I know everybody has biases as humans and it's just natural, right? But I really wish there was more of a, hey, if you're on the committee, you have to watch every game and watch tape and come to a conclusion. Like, I just don't think by the time Tuesday rolls around that these committee members have rewatched every game from, let's say, the I don't even know why they do the top 25. Really don't know why. Just do top 15. That's all that matters. Because no matter what, if I get you have to rank down a little bit more in terms of conference auto bids, but just pick them. I mean, the NCAA tournament committee doesn't do many, I don't think they do one, faux selection show or anything. Like they just let it rip.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then at the end of the year, just pick the group of 5 representative. You don't even need to rank them, and then slot them, whatever, like a seed in the NCAA tournament. So I don't know. Just pick your top 15 and then go from there. But then you need to start branching out, watching other games. It's just not enough time. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then they got to meet on Tuesday and talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, to watch at least 20 individual games, there might be some crossover and teams playing each other in conference. That's a ton of time.
Yeah.
They have lives and other jobs.
They do. And I think that's part of the problem. I think they have too many thumbs and too many pies, to be honest. I don't think they can really be effective at anything, much less watching all the games that are necessary. To be honest, they watch game day in the morning, and then I'm sure they watch one at 11, one at 3, and one at 7, and then maybe they watch one on Sunday, that really piqued their interest. I mean, there's no way they're watching Boise State play Wyoming. I mean, there's no way. I mean, speaking of, Boise State struggled in that game. I think it was 17-13 was the final, but which Wyoming was my second dynasty in college football 25. SMU was my first, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's a flaw with the system. I don't know if a committee is even really necessary if they're just going to rank them the way that they have been. I'm not saying go back to the BCS computer rankings, but I think the more teams you have, if you just want to rank it by who are the 11 best and then the one group of 5 rep, that's certainly a way to do it. But I did want to touch on the chaos in the truck stop conference real quick in the Big 12, of course. BYU's loss against Arizona State in Tempe, Coach Satake, I thought, handled the field rush with an insane amount of class. If you didn't see it, Arizona State rushed the field. They put 1 second back on the clock. Arizona State's head coach is going nuts on the officials, students, saying there's no way. They have to spend all this time getting the students off the field. They run the one play that's left, and then the result didn't change. But anyway, they asked Coach Satake, like, hey, how do you feel about that? Like, did that bother you about the field rushing? And he basically said, look, they're excited. It's 2 ranked teams playing. They got a ranked win at home. So, no, I'm not upset at all. None of our players got hurt, so there's nothing to be upset about. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was definitely notable. And then, of course, Colorado loses to Kansas. Second straight week that Kansas has beaten the Big 12 leader, which shout out the Jayhawks for that. They're really going to nuke the conference out of the playoff. But 8 teams are alive for the Big 12 championship in the last week of the regular season, and no one controls their own destiny. Not one team is, if you win, you're in. Everybody has to rely on the other 7 teams to find out really at about midnight who's going to play for a conference championship in the Big 12, which I think is hilarious. I think it's awesome. I'm so glad we're not in that conference, but good Lord, it's entertaining for the rest of us.
I know it's coming together so well in that conference. If you're an SMU fan, to just giggle on anything. If you've been keeping receipts, and I'm not saying like go out there and do it, because SMU could lose on Saturday, they could lose in the ACC Championship. Things can happen. It's college football. But if you've got receipts, you're at least getting a little warmed up. You're probably stretching a little bit, and you're about ready to go to war on December 8th and start letting loose a little bit if things go SMU's way. Not that you probably haven't been letting loose on Twitter before then, but you can really gas it up depending on who wins that Big 12 title game, and or just they still got another week. It could get crazier. It really could. Houston plays BYU. Willie Fritz, he's a good coach.
He is.
And you never know. So we'll be watching that one real closely. And Boise State is really close to kind of punching their ticket above the Big 12 champ, which would be wild.
It would be. I mean, as of last week, Boise
State
had
as a one loss, by the way. Sorry, as a one loss team.
Which is insane. But their one loss is to Oregon. I mean, which earlier in the season, I remember the Coast to Coast episode where we're like, oh man, Oregon only beat Boise State by X amount. I mean, Boise State's a good football team. We'll see if they can go deep in the playoff. But I mean, and then finally, unfortunately, the head coach that was talking about, I don't know if we want to play in the conference championship, which Billy, you can do the Kirk Herbstreit and stay mute on this one if you would like. But of course, Ole Miss losing to Florida Gators. Florida Gators have gotten hot lately.
Yeah.
I mean, they are really starting to find their rhythm, and I think part of that has to do with retaining Billy Napier. I mean, instead of nuking your season, you've allowed the head coach to be retained, stay in place, and they got better, and they proved that, you know what? Actually, he does deserve to be here.
And DJ Lagway, the former 5-star, is just Graham Mertz hurting out for the year for the Florida Gators. And he looks, I mean, DJ Lagway looks the part. And that's a Florida offense that just didn't have any juice for a long time. Very conservative, basic, predictable, an old man offense ran for Graham Mertz. And it's a young man's game with DJ Lagway in there. And he is making it, he's making plays. And, Ole Miss, this is what happened to SMU against BYU. They got down in the red zone. They got down inside the 10-yard line. And they fumbled their opportunity away, or they threw an interception. And they came away 0-3 in the red zone. And Jackson Dart threw 3 interceptions. And when you go on the road in the SEC, that's how you get beat. And not to oversimplify it, but man, when you give up 24 points as a defense, and you've even given them at leleast 3 extra possessions, that's a pretty good day. Pete Golding, Randall Joyner, the whole crew down there in Oxford, like that is what I believe. Most everyone down there is saying it's the best Ole Miss defense in the modern era of Ole Miss football. Like even when the Land Sharks were running around down there with Robert and Ndichie and all of them, like this is it's really tough. I mean, they were so close to punching their ticket because Mississippi State's up this week for Ole Miss, and they're 26-point favorites now. So I don't know. I mean, it just goes to show you. I mean, Texas A&M goes on the road and loses at Auburn. Who would have thought that to open SEC, or not even open, about 4 weeks into SEC play, Auburn's one of the worst teams. And, they're able to pull it out. So
say what you will about the Cal Bears. They went to Auburn and won, something that Texas A&M could not do.
Yeah. Hate to see it. So, well, all right, guys. Well, we will let you go on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. What a blast it was, Hayden. Looking forward to running it back in Charlotte and hopefully meeting even more Mustang fans. It just seems like people are racking up the plane flights and hotel rooms already and getting ready for what is, the final piece to SMU's announcement that they are most certainly back in the college football playoff elite. There's no other way to say it. You are playing for a conference championship. You are an elite football team. And that's where SMU is right now. That's where they've been since Kevin Jennings took over. And now they've got to finish the job and send the seniors out the right way and not go limping in. This is a big deal this weekend, and we'll talk about that later this week. We'll get you guys the episode Wednesday night in time for Thanksgiving if you're running around doing errands. And then we're going to go to Thanksgiving and Friday and hang out and eat leftovers. And as Coach Lashley said, Thanksgiving's on Thursday. Friday, you can hit the leftovers. Come 2:30 on Saturday, it's time for the Mustangs. So we'll be there to cover it and watch it all. So for Hayden Howerton, I'm Billy Embody. This has been another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. We'll catch you guys next time on another edition. Thanks for listening and have a good week, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.